Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. So I've got a different kind of video to share with you today. It's actually a tutorial video. I made this a couple of months ago for the online sewing weekender, and that's hosted by The Fold Line and Charlotte Emma Pattons. I was meant to also upload it to my channel after the weekend had come and gone, but it kind of slipped my mind. But now I'm kind of getting into the groove of posting again. I thought I'd share it with you guys now. So I made a tutorial video on how to hack a gathered and puffed sleeve. So I show you 3 different methods of how to hack a sleeve pattern in order to achieve that look. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hi guys, and welcome to my video for the online sewing weekender. A huge thanks and congratulations to Rachel and Kate from The Fold Line and Charlotte from Charlotte Emma Pattons for organising this big shindig online for us for the 2nd year in a row. Who thought we'd still be here, right? I'm sure we would all rather be seeing each other in person, but since we can't yet, this will have to do. I'm looking forward to the day that I can see you all in person next though. So a little bit about me. My name's Emily. I have a blog called Self Assembly Required and also a corresponding Instagram and YouTube channel as well, and where I detail all my makes, review patterns, and also talk about all my other kind of crafts that I'm doing as well. So that can be knitting, crochet, shoemaking, ring carving, all sorts of things. I like to make everything basically. So today for my sewing weekender video, I thought I would bring you a tutorial and a tutorial on pattern hacking, which is one of my favourite things to do. In particular, what I'm going to show you today is how to make a puffed or gathered sleeve, and I'm going to show you a couple ways that you can do that and add volume to a sleeve of an existing pattern in order to create this kind of really trendy look that's going around at the moment. I do love a puff sleeve. I have a tendency to add them to everything at the moment. Current pattern, as you can see, my current shirt that I'm wearing. I just have quite big upper arms, and I found that actually embracing this trend has really helped me and helped make sure that I'm not worrying about things like fitting and how things look, because I'm like, this is how they're meant to look. So you'll see if you follow me on any of those channels that changing sleeves is a very common thing for me to do. I'm going to show you today how I do those. So what we're going to need is your sleeve pattern. I've traced mine out. When you're doing hacks, I always recommend tracing them if you can do, and save your original one just in case you want to use that again later on. And I've got a pattern master, but any ruler will do, a pair of paper scissors and a marking tool, so pen, pencil. I'm using a Sharpie just so that my lines are nice and clear for you guys. I wouldn't normally use this just because the lines are quite thick, and I do think that having nice thin crisp lines make it much easier to know where to cut and what you're kind of working with, etc. So the first hack that I want to do, so firstly I have chosen a sleeve pattern that is really simple in nature. It's a set-in sleeve that's got a relatively loose fit, like it's not a really fitted sleeve. It doesn't have a really high sleeve cap, just a really generic normal sleeve. And the first hack we're going to do with this is just to add volume basically through the middle of this, and that is going to leave you with a gathered edge at the top, at the sleeve cap, and across the hem at the bottom down here too. So what I've done here is just drawn on my kind of center line in the middle of the sleeve so far, which is essentially your grain line on here. And from here I'm going to mark out, it's up to you how wide you want to do it, but I normally mark out about 5 centimeters on either side of this line, and like so. It's a bit of a nominal figure, mostly because I've already got the graduated markings on my pattern master, so it makes doing this an absolute doddle. I'm not doing lots of measuring or anything like that, and I'm able to get those lines in. Oh, bit of a wobble at the end there. And so you can see those 3 lines here, and what we're going to do is use those lines as markers to add width to the sleeve, and that's even width across the top and the bottom here. And to do that's pretty easy. I'm literally just going to cut into these lines like so. Okay, so you've got your 4 pieces there, and you can do this kind of in as many pieces as you wanted to, as per your preference. Now that we have that, we're going to take our scrap paper, which is over here, and lay the cut pattern pieces over the top of this. Hopefully you can see that all quite clearly, like so. So how it's laid out, you can really kind of get an idea of how we're then adding width to this. I like to then just draw a line across the bottom, and that's just going to help make sure that bottom edge is all nice and level. So just straight line across the bottom, and then we're going to just start by sticking these bits down along this edge, so using this bottom one as an edge. And again, just to be easy, I'm going to add 5 centimeters in between each piece here, so we're adding 15 centimeters to the width of this pattern. So the first one, just pop down anywhere. I use tape for this, and I like to use I think it's the Scotch Magic tape, just because it tears really easily and you can draw over it, so it takes a pen really well. And from there, I'm just going to kind of mark out where the next line would be, and like so. I'm going to stick that next bit down. And repeat. Alright, and now that that's done, it gives you a much better idea of how that is shaping up in terms of the width of the new sleeve. And now what we need to do is smooth out this curve around here, okay? For the purposes of this, I am going to keep everything really smooth and really flat and to a similar cap height as what was there previously. So I'm going to firstly go across the top here. It's about 5 centimeters that I've added on here, so I'm going to go across here, and I'm going to make a mark as to where the middle of this is. and I'm going to just round off this, and it doesn't need to be perfect, but it just needs to kind of join up all those lines in a smooth fashion, like so. And again on this side, so you're taking basically adding a little bit on this section and taking a little bit off here as well. And that is it. So that is essentially your pattern piece. You'll cut this out. You'll need to make a new notch or marker where this point is and this point is here, and that is going to be where you gather your stitches between. So when you go to insert the sleeve, you'll have your gathering stitches across the top here between these two markers, and that will just give you all that width, all those gathers into that kind of small space there. And again on the bottom you can do the same thing, either keeping those in here, or if you like just gather all the way across to the ends. Missed a few little bits to tape. It is a good idea to tape both ends if you can do. Oh dear. There we go, that's just going to secure everything in place. And you can see where I'm trimming off the end here. And that is your pattern piece. And so that's going to give you the gathers across the top of the sleeve and across the hem as well. So if you wanted to have kind of gathers going across more of the sleeve, so instead of being between these points here, you could make more cuts through the sleeve itself to start off with, and add those gathers going all the way across. You could in theory just kind of move this volume around the sleeve as you wish to, but this allows you to keep the right curve of the arm side on the front and back, as it is in the original pattern. So the next kind of style of gathered sleeve we're going to do is one where we just add lots of gathers to the bottom of the sleeve. So we're essentially keeping the top of the sleeve set in the same way, so it's flat against the bodice, and then just adding lots of gathers at the bottom down here. Now this is probably what I use the most, just because I quite like to have the volume at the bottom here, and also because I just have quite big upper arms, and this is a good way to hide it, I think. So similarly to before, we're just going to pop a big line right down the middle. Obviously if you have a grain line, follow it. I forgot to put mine onto this pattern piece, so we're just going to go with it. And then from here I'm going to make a few little marks across the bottom like so. I'll put this way around, hopefully you can see that a little bit better. So depending again on how full, how wide you want this, you can do and how kind of smooth you want that line to be, you can do lots of little cuts to end it for this kind of slash and spread method, or a few kind of bigger ones, a few chunkier areas if you wanted to. I'll go with adding quite a lot of volume in this. I'm going to do these kind of every 4 centimeters like so. Make a mark on the edge here, and from each of those marks I'm going to make a line right to where the shoulder notch point is. So you've got those new 5 lines going across here. And we're going to cut along each of these lines almost all the way to the end, but just shy. You do want to leave a couple of millimeters to still join on right at the end there, so there was also a joint on at that point. If your cutting's not perfect, don't panic, and if you cut through it again, don't panic. It just means that when you go to kind of spread and everything like that, you just got to make sure that those ends are meeting at the top there. So I'm going to grab a new piece of paper to put underneath it, and we can start getting this pattern down. Great, so now we've got the paper under here, we can start sticking this down and see how much volume we want to add to this. When it comes to kind of putting the paper underneath and adding things, you can always just use scrap bits of paper. You don't need to cover the whole thing by any means. You just need to cover the area where you're adding volume to and kind of moving the pattern piece. So I could have had a kind of triangle this shape, and that would have done the same job as well. So just to start with, I'm going to just kind of generically stick one side down for us. Let's just say that that is kind of ready. That's our kind of stable point with this. I'm going to do that all the way to the top here. And then make sure that these are all in the right order, by the way, because they're all going to quite a narrow point. It is easy for things to kind of get moved around a bit. And from here you can kind of see how much volume you might want to add and how spread out you want that to be. Kind of doing it like this gives you kind of what like a flutter sleeve would be. But obviously in this context we are looking to gather that hem, so it's got a nice puff at the bottom of the sleeve. Okay, let's just see how much we want to add here, and again, I'll just go with about a 5 centimeter add-on in each area. There's 5 spaces that we're doing, so that's adding about 25 centimeters of width to this. It doesn't need to be really perfect, but you do want it to be as even as possible, kind of left and right here. So I'm going to get that down. Getting a few pieces up around here, same thing. I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. And now you just secure everything in place. So you can use glue if you don't like using tape. I just find tape a little bit easier because I'm used to it. Make sure you tape over across the top up here as well. I like to just do a few little bits across the top. At this point it's not if you did lose a bit, you know, some of this came off, it's not the end of the world because you've got the general shape at the bottom down here as well. You just have to put a few bits down just to make sure everything is not going to go flying. Mostly because I use this as the basic pattern, so I'll be using this to pin directly to fabric, so I do like to have all my bits down. So when you get to this point, you then need to look at kind of smoothing a line around all the way around the top here, and also at the top up here. So with the top one, obviously it's got this kind of dip on here now, and you want to just round that out so that it's got a nice curve on the top up, like here, like so. Don't forget to put in your shoulder notch as well. And along the bottom line, again, I like to just freehand it and just go across. The bottom like so. You are gathering this edge. It is not going to need to be 100% perfect because you're not going to see it. It's going to, a few millimeters here and there is not going to make a huge amount of difference to the puffiness of your fabric. You just want to make it nice and smooth there so it's easy to work with. So I'll cut that out and you can see what that looks like as a kind of general whole piece. Rid of the excess. So this is what your pattern piece looks like, and I'll compare that to the other one that we made before to start off with, and you can see that the shape of it is quite different, as you'd imagine. Where you're adding kind of about 15 centimeters of width on here and 25 centimeters of width at the bottom, this will give you quite different shapes. So from here I'm going to show you one other way that I like to add volume to a sleeve, and that is by adding onto the sleeve cap, so increasing the height of each of these, and that is what gives you the kind of really 80s puffed sleeve, and that high sleeve cap height really just increases that kind of poof that you get, and that kind of poofiness that you'd get around that shoulder that makes it stand up a little bit. It is really easy to do that. Both of these you could do that with, and really at a point where you have this on paper, you could just add, and especially with something like this, add on your sleeve height around like so. And when you go to sew that in and gather that up, that will have that extra bit of volume, and that kind of almost like a fold over on the top there. You can really exaggerate it and go all the way up. And then, you know, look at things like ruching and things down the side of the sleeve if you wanted to. So just to give you an idea of what that would look like, I'm going to just quickly trace around here and show you how I would kind of change that to make that pattern. So I will habitually like trace around things, by the way. You obviously don't need to. If you want to just use paper to add that on, you can do. Also not tracing around this very well today, but let's give it a go. So I'm going to trace around the top here. And again, pop your notches in. A bit of that at the moment. And so you just want to pop some extra height on here. Depending on how much you want, you can measure it out, you can do it by eye. At the end of the day, if you're using the same sleeve pattern for the right and left side, it kind of doesn't matter what you do, because whatever you cut is going to end up being symmetrical anyway. Oh, I just realised I forgot to put on my centre. Let's put that back on here once more. Let's do that centre notch as well. So say I wanted to add on 5 centimetres. You can see that I really like to use this 5 centimetre mark, and it's nice to use the curve of this pattern master to do that. I will always flip it over, and that gives you that shape there. Okay, so that's going to give you the kind of increased sleeve height. And obviously that width increase across the top, so you'd want to mark this if you're going to do it. And this is gathered, and again across the bottom like so. Ta-da! So yeah, so there's not much to it. When it comes down to kind of moving things about and adding volume, it really is a case of just, you know, just don't being afraid to make cuts and add volume where you want it. Especially in situations where we're just gathering the final result, we're not worrying about, you know, measuring for pleats and things like that, then actually you can be quite liberal with this and quite carefree and still achieve a pretty good result with that. So hopefully that all made sense to you, and you've learned a little bit about the kind of slash and spread technique of altering patterns. It is just a drafting technique, so this is something that you can use if you wanted to draft things from scratch, but it is something that I like to use on existing patterns just to, you know, make the most out of the patterns that we already have. And it's always such a nice thing to be able to make your own mark on you know, chalkboard patterns. And I'm going to finish this off with my top tip when it comes to making a really good puffed sleeve, and that is your foundations of what's going underneath your sleeve itself. So my favourite fabrics to work with are generally very soft, very drapey. The majority of, you know, my makes are in things like viscose and rayons, where, you know, they're very soft, very flowy, but they don't have a lot of body to them. So if you really want to get a really big dramatic sleeve in there, you do need to add something to those in order to give it the body to stand up by itself. So what I like to do is add a piece of silk organza under the sleeve, particularly under the sleeve head, to make it really stand out. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in one of my recent makes. So this is a dress that I've made recently. It is the Nina Lee Park Lane dress, which I have modified. And you can see with this sleeve here that, you know, this fabric is really soft, it's really drapey. It's what's called a tinsel lawn, but it just feels like kind of any kind of viscose challis. And you can see what I've managed to create with that. It's got loads of bounce, loads of volume in that sleeve over the top. I used the first slash and spread method that I showed you, adding width across the whole of the sleeve in order to create this, and that's created more of a gather at the bottom as well. So on the inside of this, you can see that I've got this going on here. And also a hair cord in here. You can see that I've got this going on. This is silk organza, which I have cut to size so that it follows the pattern, but only that top kind of half of the sleeve head. I've just overlocked the edge of it just to keep that tidy, and I have essentially underlined the sleeve with that. So I laid the organza directly over the sleeve itself before making up, and then I've gathered them together and sewn them in together. And that will create this lovely puff there. Silk organza is one of those really wonderful fabrics where, you know, it's light as air, sheer, see-through, it's not going to affect anything else, but gives you that wonderful lift and bounce that you want with something like this. Of course, you know, not everybody wants this kind of style, but I love it. So thanks for joining me today. Don't forget you can follow my sewing journey over on my blog, Instagram, or on YouTube, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. Bye guys.